thank you all for participating. And we're really excited to have you here for our workshop on personal branding. My name is Beverly Brocker, and I'm the director for the Career Management Center in the Fowler College of Business at SDSU. And we are super excited today to have Mark Lindner with us. Mark is a general manager at MillerCoors for Pennsylvania, and he's a recognized expert in the area of personal branding. And we have had Mark speak to several different groups in recent years, and I know I always learn something and really appreciate Mark taking the time that he has in order to come and speak with all of you today. I do want to let you know that this is going to be an interactive workshop, and please do use the chat when we're seeking some feedback. Please use the chat feature, and then we also have the Q&A going. So if you have questions, we'll probably take most of those at the end, but please feel free to type in your questions whenever you have them. And again, thank you all very much for participating today. And Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to be here and address our audience. And I'm going to let you take it away.
Thanks, Beverly. I really appreciate it. And good afternoon, everybody. Welcome from across the United States in the lovely state of Pennsylvania, where it is extremely hot and humid. But I'm so glad you could join today. My goal today is really to challenge all of us, including myself, to think a little bit about what is our personal brand? Who are we? What do we stand for? What do we believe in? And as importantly, how do other people see us? So that's really my goal today, is to at least show you down this path. And to put it into perspective, I didn't realize until maybe a third into my career how important this was. As you can see in the bottom, the quote, most of the career decisions, you're not in the room. Somebody is there on your behalf saying, oh, I know Mark Lindner, here's what Mark stands for. Well, hopefully they're actually stating what I do stand for, and they have that brand knowledge of this is what the Mark Lindner brand is. So really that's what we're going to challenge you with. And I will tell you, part of this presentation might get a little uncomfortable, because we're going to talk about things like accountability. In any branding that you ever do, accountability becomes very important. So let's start off. What is a brand? So all of us every day, we shop at grocery stores or convenience stores. We go to drug stores. When we buy a car, anything like that, we are buying brands. Very few people buy generics. People like brand names. Why? Well, you can make a case they trust them. But if you look at the American Marketing Association and really what they call out as a brand, the word that sticks out to me more than anything else is differentiated. So if you think about Nike, for example, everybody in the world knows the Nike swoosh, probably one of the most iconic symbols out there. But actually, that's not why people buy their clothing or their shoes. They buy them because Nike, in their mind, is differentiated from Adidas or any of the other Puma. That's what they look at, is what differentiates. Why do I want to be associated with the Nike swoosh? I think Dean Redding says it the right way. It's also a promise of value. Now, what is the promise of value? So if I buy a new pair of Nike shoes, they're going to be comfortable. My friends are going to think I really look good in them. That's the promise of value. If I go to a restaurant, the promise is they're going to have the craveable items I enjoy. So when you're thinking about your brand, ask yourself, is your brand differentiated? And if so, how is it differentiated? And how do you add value? So today, that's what I really challenge all of us to think about when we think of our personal brand: differentiation and how do we add value. So today, we're going to really touch on 4 areas. We're going to start off by not only going through what personal branding is, how it affects you and how to look at your own brand, how that brand is going to add value, how do you maximize adoption? And for those of you who are going out into the workforce, or even those of you in the workforce looking for a promotion or maybe a different job, and then finally, how do you monitor your brand? So you may start off thinking my brand is this, but if other people think your brand is something else, that actually is an issue. So let's start off. This is where everybody, please get into the chat function. Who is this? Who is this individual?
So J-Lo, she's a singer. Jenny from the Block. Jennifer Lopez, actress, singer, mom.
Perfect. By the way, did you know she has her own foundation that really increases the availability for healthcare for women and children? Did you realize she was the 6th highest paid female vocalist? Isn't it interesting, your perspective and your perception of J-Lo, that actually did it include the things that she's probably the most proud of, and namely her foundation? Maybe. Okay, who is this?
Come on, time to use your chat feature, please. Tennis player, Serena Williams. What else? Mom, sister, warrior, best athlete.
I'm sure warrior would be a moniker she would really enjoy. But here's what's interesting. Absolutely one of, if not the best tennis player to ever play. But did you know she's been on the board of directors of 2 major companies? Do you know she has her own clothing line? I didn't. Again, when you think of Serena Williams as she is developing her own brand, I'm sure she takes a lot of pride, and she should, in those accomplishments. But actually her brand, if somebody said Serena Williams, you'd say, oh, she's a great tennis player, or she's a wonderful mom. So again, you think about branding, that's an interesting push. Finally, who is this individual?
Elon Musk, Tesla creator, entrepreneur, CEO of SpaceX, inventor, businessman, innovator, billionaire, PayPal, new dad.
Is he a good person and a hero, or is he a disruptor and a bad person?
Somebody says both.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Disruptor, depends on who you ask.
That's exactly right. And here's the interesting thing about Elon Musk. Depending on who you talk to, what he wants to be known as is the person that saves the world. Whether it's through his technology, whatever it is, he's very proud, and he should be, of that. But it depends on your perspective. So my guess is most of us on this call have never met any of the 3. I would love to meet them because I respect them tremendously. But we all had our opinion. And think about, as soon as their picture showed up on the screen, what was your first thought? Did you go, oh, this is somebody I really enjoy, or yeah, whatever? Now put your picture up there and you're in an interview, or put your picture up there and you're about ready, you're facing 3 other people for promotion. What are the people in that room saying about your brand? Are they saying, and I'll use Serena Williams, are they saying, boy, she's on 2 board of directors, we need to have her on our board of directors? Or are they saying, best tennis player ever, great mom, I don't know if we want her on our board of directors? That's very unfair, because she's proven herself. But again, by not letting her brand known, nobody else knew. And really, that's what I want to challenge all of us to think about is what is your brand, not just to yourself. So I might think I'm the thinnest, best looking guy out there. The reality is I'm 15 pounds overweight on a good day, and I've got a face for radio. So when you think about it, I might have a perspective, but it really doesn't matter. It's what do people see your brand as? As I've done this class, I've used automobiles, I've used consumer products, and it's very, very interesting. I've had people, especially with automobiles, say a certain brand and go, man, that brand is awesome. It's reliable. I love it. And I've had people with that same brand go, well, I've had a bad situation with it. Nobody was right or wrong. It was their perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to your brand, it matters what the perspective is. Now, does that mean you're not genuine? You're not authentic to your brand? Absolutely not. Actually, what we want to do now is dive into saying, what is your brand? What do you stand for? What's important to you? So when these opportunities come up, people go, oh, I know what this individual's good at. This is what I want them to do. So there's really 4 areas that if you were in marketing and you were trying to develop a successful brand, there's really 4 areas you'd say, this is what I need to dive into. Product attributes. What can you do better than anyone else? And if you think about brands that you currently buy to consume, in your mind, the brand is better. I'll give you an example. 2 energy drinks, Red Bull and Monster. Depends on who you talk to, they will tell you they love one or they love the other. And they both tell you it gives them energy. Is one better than the other? I truly don't know. But that's their perspective. So now use it for yourself. So when you're going for that job or you're going for that promotion, what differentiates you? What can you do better than everyone else? And I'll utilize myself as an example. Throughout my career, I've been put in positions where the market was challenging. I actually enjoy, and people know this, I enjoy going into very difficult situations and trying to find ways to make them better. That's what I'm good at. Actually, what I'm really not good at is if the situation is going real well, I tend to get bored and move on. So one of the parts of Mark Lindner as a brand is if there is a need for somebody to clean up a mess, send Lindner in. Now I would ask you, as you're developing your own brand, same thing. What is it that either your friends, coworkers would say about you that, boy, if this happens, we need so-and-so? You've got to be able to differentiate yourself. And what is that differentiation? The second thing is timing. Not only are you adaptable to change, but do you have the skills the company needs right now? So let's say I am the best person at figuring out operations for a manufacturer, but they have a great ops person. What they needed is a great salesperson. Okay, what my brand stands for doesn't match the skills of the company. And by the way, that's okay. One of the things that I'm going to challenge all of us to think about is as you're going for your new job or a promotion, is making sure that your brand fits what that job title is. I'm sure all of us have known somebody that started a job and you talk to them 2 weeks later and they're very unhappy. My guess is they didn't think about their skill set versus what they were going for. And it's understandable. Right now for the graduating seniors at SDSU, you're thinking to yourself, I just got to get a job, Mark. Doesn't matter, I have got to get a job. I get that, and I understand that. But I would pose to you, if it took you an extra 2 months, but you secured the job you really wanted, that you were a great fit culturally for the company, and the company was a great cultural fit for you, wasn't it worth that extra 60 days? But to be able to make that determination, you have to know what your brand is. You have to know what your brand stands for. That is what's very important. This next one, I'm going to ask everybody to jump into the chat function in a second. But not only what value do you bring to the team, but how are you seen? What I've learned in my career is there's really 4 types of individuals. There's a collaborator. And what a collaborator does is it brings a bunch of people together. There's the leader. The leader is the unselfish individual that says, come on, team, this is the direction we're going to go to. There's the doer, and that's the individual, tell me what you want me to do, Beverly, and I'm going to do it. You want me to paint a house? I'll paint a house tomorrow. And then you have the disruptor. And the disruptor is somebody that says, you know, Beverly, I know you want me to paint the house green, but you know what? The HOA on this block says you're not allowed to paint a house green. Are you really sure you want to paint the house green? Oh, okay. So if you think about any, and I'll tell you, any team I've ever had the pleasure of working with, every winning team, and by the way, put it into sports as well, has one of these 4. And if you're missing one of these 4, it can be an issue. Now, here's the question. What is your brand? What are you? Are you a collaborator? Are you somebody that loves to bring people together? Are you a leader that says, I will take responsibility, here's where we're going? Are you a doer? Somebody that says, tell me what you want me to do and I'm great at getting it done. Or are you a disruptor? Thanks to Hema, the polling is on the screen. Please let me know what you think. Okay. So what an interesting mix. And if you think about what we had said before before we voted, is every team, every winning team typically needs one of each. And if you think about the folks on this call, and thank you, I really appreciate you participating, it's pretty well matched across the board. Now let's start with an interesting question. So I noticed there's only 8 disruptors. There's 11% of us that are disruptors. Is a disruptor a bad thing or a good thing, and why? Please use your chat function. Beverly, what are we seeing?
Sorry, I was muted. We're getting a lot of responses. Definitely, some people think it's a good thing, good for pointing out errors in a plan. It depends, but they're necessary. Depends on context. It can be good. Someone says neutral, can be good or bad, depending upon how the person does it. And a couple of people are saying both. Overall, a lot of people are saying good, with definitely an element of it depends on the situation.
I think that's spot on, and well done, everybody. Thank you. When I think of the best disruptors I've ever seen in my life, and the person that said neutral actually hit on a really wonderful point, is that it's not only are you a positive disruptor, and what I mean by that is you point out the things that can make things better, but how do you do it? Sometimes, have you ever heard the adage, it's not what you say, it's how you say it? And a lot of times, that's how it plays. So for example, my favorite example of a bad disruptor is the person that wins $1 million lottery and then complains that they've got to pay tax. You want $1 million and you're netting 700,000. It's still a good thing. But most people are good disruptors. They're the ones that point out, like I said to Beverly early on, you know, I know you want to paint this house green, but the rules of the neighborhood says you're not allowed to paint the house green. If you paint it green, they're going to make you change it. Thank goodness for that disruptor. So the disruptor, although it makes a team uncomfortable at times, it's a critical part of it. Now, for your brand, if you say, Mark, I am a disruptor, just be very cautious how people actually perceive you. And it goes back to the neutral comment. It's how you convey that disruption that really becomes important. Let's ask another chat function. A doer. Can somebody be bad at being a doer?
Well, we're getting some yeses.
Did they say why?
So far, I'm not seeing reasons why.
So for the folks that said yes, I'd be interested in why you feel a doer is could be a challenge.
Maybe jumping in and just starting to do without thinking things through in advance. Taking on tasks that you're not necessarily qualified to do or doing it incorrectly. Not using critical thinking.
Those are great answers.
We're getting a lot of answers. Getting to the conclusion too fast. Maybe not challenging the status quo.
When you think of somebody that is a doer, some of the challenges, they get very nervous if they're not doing something. Literally, they get very nervous that, okay, yeah, we spent 5 minutes talking about the problem. Now let's do something. The comment on critical thinking. It's one thing, one of the jokes that I've always enjoyed is the joke that a friend is driving with somebody else and he goes, you know, you're going in the wrong direction. And the driver goes, yeah, but we're really making good time. But you're still going in the wrong direction. It really comes down to, with a doer, do they have the patience to listen to what actually needs to be done constructively? There's nothing worse than somebody doing something and understanding, uh-oh, that's not really the way it was supposed to be done. So if you identify yourself as a doer, you are a critical member of every team. But just always be careful that you're in sync with the team and you're not just getting nervous and saying, I'm just going to do something. I know what needs to be done. The challenge is when a doer becomes a leader, they don't go through the steps, the strategic steps of saying, you know, what are the facts? What are the objectives? What's the strategy? They go immediately to tactics. Well, it's the old cliche, ready, fire, aim. Well, no, you need to aim before you fire, right? So you want to make sure as a doer, if that's your really good moniker, you're critical to every team, but you want to make darn sure that you're looking at doing it the right way and being part of the team. So a leader, what's a bad leader?
Leading people in the wrong direction, not having a vision, someone who's selfish, someone who doesn't listen to other people, who doesn't care about the team, someone who doesn't take responsibility, lack of vision, someone who doesn't listen to the opinions of other people, poor communication, disorganized.
Yeah, those are all fantastic. One of the challenges I think as we all were growing up is you need to be a leader, or you join a company, you need to be promoted into management. First of all, I will tell you the company that I work for that I love, I've been with this company most of my career. We believe that if you're doing a great job as a doer, we should pay you for doing a great job as a doer. the key to being a good leader is the unselfishness, and your team is first. What I tell a lot of my younger teammates is, if you enjoy winning more than the team winning, there's nothing wrong with that. That is perfectly great. But more than likely, being a leader is not what you really should aspire to, because it'll become very frustrating. True leaders are the ones that take the hits for the team. They're the ones that absolutely listen, absolutely provide direction. I think that feedback was spot on. But they're also the ones that protect the team. They're the ones out front. They're the ones that are saying, you know what, if you have a problem with the team, you come to me first. And the leader protects their team. I will tell you, in a lot of businesses, being a doer and not a leader, you'll be paid and compensated significantly more, and that's great. So being a leader is more about how you feel and what you believe. By the way, not good or bad. It's just what you feel and what you believe. And then finally, on collaborator, what makes a bad collaborator?
Someone who is adamant about their own ideas, poor listening and sharing, someone who gets people talking for the wrong reasons, selfish. Bad collaborators get angry at their partners, disrespectful, puts their personal interests ahead of the team's success.
I think that's spot on. I have really nothing to add. I think the team did a great job answering that question. Here's the key on a collaborator. A collaborator has to enjoy getting a group together and having the group's idea as a success. So for example, one of the jobs I would be awful at is a collaborator. Because as a collaborator, there's a lot of patience. So think about ambassadors, US ambassadors to different countries. They're never going to put a win on the board, as it were, but actually that's not their job. But they do a wonderful job making sure everybody's aligned, that the US knows what that country wants and that country knows what the US wants. Not good or bad, no judgment. That's the job. So for the 24% that are collaborators, that would be the question. Is that something I enjoy doing? Do I enjoy bringing people together with diverse attitudes and opinions and trying to come up with a common good? If I'm one of the 33% that are leaders, am I unselfish? Do I want to see my team win before I win? If I'm 31% of the doers, am I somebody that, give me the task, I will do it better than anybody else and you can count on me? Or am I the 11% disruptors that I'm going to call out some of the potential flaws or opportunities, but I'm going to call it out in the right way? So when you think about it, that's how, for social opinion, and by the way, you may think you're one of these four, but if everybody thinks you're something else, so I might think, you know what, I am the best leader in the world. And people go, Lindner's more of a doer. When people are talking about my brand, they're talking about me as a doer, not necessarily as a leader. And that's what you'll see in business, is people say, I don't understand why I didn't get that promotion to a leadership position. Unfortunately, what people see your brand standing for is not a leader. And again, that's not bad, but if you want to be seen as a leader, then you need to work on your brand to make sure people know you have those leadership skills. Hopefully that makes sense. The last part is really part that I've heard throughout my career is not fair. And that's, what are your results? Do you add value? Why is it on free agency, baseball, football, hockey, basketball will pay millions and millions of dollars for an athlete? Because they know they can add value. They know they put wins on the board. Is that fair? Unfortunately, the results, fair doesn't matter. Let me bring it closer to home right now. Right now, you're in the middle of this workshop, and we really appreciate all the participation. Let's say your phone rings. Do you answer it? Or do you swipe? It's an interesting question. I would tell you that more than likely, if you swipe, it's because the person on the other line is not going to add value at that time. That doesn't mean you don't value them. That doesn't mean you don't care for them. At that point of time, you're not valuing what they're going to do. And I'll give you a personal example. I have an extremely close friend of mine. I love him dearly. He is just a wonderful, wonderful individual. But I know if I get on the phone, it's going to be an hour and a half. It just is. Doesn't matter, time of day, it's going to be an hour and a half. If I don't have an hour and a half at that point of time, I can't answer the call. Again, that doesn't mean I don't care deeply for this individual. What it means, though, is that at that point in time, it doesn't add value. So on your brand, how do you add value? What is the value proposition of your brand? Go back to the initial slide that we first showed. Differentiation and adding value. That really is what your brand has to possess. Okay, Hema, can you take the poll off the screen, please?
I think it's off. X out of it on yours, yeah.
Owner operator error, everybody. That was on me. Sorry, Hema, my bad. All of you received this grid or this worksheet, and I would ask you to walk through it in the comfort of your own place where you are right now. Spend some time and think through it. We talked about each one of the 4 buckets, and honestly ask yourself, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And the reason why this is important is because after you fill this out, I'm going to ask you to go to a colleague. Notice I didn't say close friend. I didn't say relative. I want you to go to a colleague, somebody that you trust, to give you honest feedback. And the reason is if you take it to a friend, they're not going to want to hurt your feelings. And they're going to say, oh, you're the best. Oh my goodness. You know, the sun rises and falls on you. But that's actually not helpful. I'll give you a personal experience. When I started out in business, I thought I was a very good presenter. And I was convinced I was really good at what I was doing. I went to a public speaking class. And we had to give a presentation. And at the end of the presentation, the moderator stood up and said, I don't know about everybody else, but you scared the heck out of me. I looked, I said, what do you mean I scared you? He said, let me play back the video. I actually scared myself. I think I caught my head spinning 4 times. I mean, I was the most intense person I had ever seen. What was interesting about that is if you would have asked me, Mark, how are your presentation skills? I would have said, oh, I love speaking in front of people. Well, I may have loved speaking in front of people, but I scared the heck out of people. So did they actually enjoy the presentation? Probably not so much. So what I learned by talking to somebody that was a confidant, and he's helped me over the years, is that it really comes down to what people think of your brand. Again, go back to the 3 stars we started this presentation off. I guarantee you, when I showed Elon Musk's picture, if Elon was on the phone, he'd go, I'm a trendsetter, I'm helping to save the world. Yes, they produce a good car named a Tesla, but I guarantee you that's what he didn't want his brand name known as. He wanted his brand name known as something else. Well, obviously, Elon is in a world of his own, so it really doesn't matter. But for all of us that are either starting out in our career or trying to build our career, it really becomes important what our brand is. When people mention your name, What do you stand for? What do they know you to be? So we're going to try something on a chat function, and I'll start it off. If you notice at the top, it says, what brand name are you? What I'd like you to do is ask yourself the question, if you could be any brand, either a consumer product or a company, what would you be and why? And I'll start it off. So if you asked me this question, I would tell you I'm Amazon. The reason is Amazon is a disruptor. They like to go into different markets and change things up. They like to challenge the status quo and see if there's better ways of doing things. So why is that on the top of this worksheet? Because as I'm looking at my attributes, my timing, my social attributes and results, do those actually match what I think my brand name is? Possibly. So right now I'd ask you, please put in your chat, and again, we won't use names, but put in the chat function, what brand name do you feel you are and why?
So I have one person who says, I'm like Nike. I just do it. I get things done.
Okay, so think about that. That is a perfect branding. So they're a doer. The great thing is they know they're a doer and they enjoy that function. And by the way, I don't know too many more successful companies than Nike. Just do it. That's awesome. Good response.
And I have someone else who says, I feel like I'm like Patagonia. I think about the ethical and environmental implications of what I do.
Again, that is a perfect response. That's knowing what kind of brand you want to be. And when you go under the attributes, timing, social attributes, and results, it helps you to say, here's the brand I want to be. I either aspire to, or maybe I already am at that brand. Do all of the parts below match that? And if not, how do I change that dialogue? How do I change the narrative so it really adds to that?
Do you want to hear a few others, Mark?
Sure, I'd love to.
Okay, so we've got someone who says that they're like Oprah Winfrey in putting other people first. Apple, because they're a leading company in the tech industry, leading the way for other companies to follow. Like Nordstrom, because the goal is to deliver a quality product with excellent customer service. Kaiser, always thriving. Ben and Jerry's, they're ethical and do what they want to get their message across. I think that's most of them.
Well, that's impressive.
Yeah.
If we were together live, well, here, I'll do it anyway. That is really well done. I'm very, very impressed. One of the things that I would tell you that's impressive about it is what we call staying within your own skin. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? Think about a provocation I said earlier on about when you go to work for a company, are you culturally tied to that company? Do you believe in what they believe in? If you hear what Beverly had said, a lot of those brands, those are very good, high integrity, solid things that says this is what my brand stands for. Now imagine that and then going to work for a company that doesn't stand for the same thing. That's going to make it very difficult for anybody, quite frankly, to adapt, to be part of that. So again, the challenge would be to really take time and think about some of that. So what I'd ask you to do is, first of all, start with the worksheet and start with what brand name. And by the way, you can change. And then go through where are you now first. So take a look and answer where you are now and how you're going and what you think that believes before you go to the next step, and then go to see a colleague and say, do you agree with this? Because it's tough to say where you want to be if you don't know where you already are, right? So something to think about on that. And then use this as your inspiration as you move forward to keep ground checking. Am I where I want to be? Am I doing what I really want to do on this? So I would tell you, this would be my one ask for everybody on this call, is please take the time with this. For most people, you'll find this is very difficult to fill out initially because you may not have thought about it. What's funny is all of us will check different websites and TikTok and CNBC, all these different websites every day. How much time do we spend thinking about our own brand and what our brand stands for? So now for the uncomfortable part. I would tell you in the last, I've been in the industry, the beverage industry, for 35 years. I've had wonderful mentors like Ron Fowler that have helped me throughout my career. I've been in a total of 16, if you can believe, reorganizations. 16. Now, some I was on the side where Ron would buy a company and we would be coming in. Others, I've been on the other side where somebody's either purchased the company or we're downsizing or upsizing. The one thing I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, in all 16 of those reorgs, is it comes down to, do you add value? By the way, not in your own mind, but in other people's perception. Do they see you as somebody that adds value to the organization? Or when they bring up your name, people go, I'm not sure who that is. And I will tell you, in the last 3 reorganizations with the company I work with, there was a big pool. All names were put into a pool, and there was nothing that was guaranteed. It started for job by job. So what I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes is, what does adding value mean? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to really anybody? What strengths do you have? So remember at the very beginning, we talked about differentiation. And notice how that word keeps coming up almost in every slide. Why, as a hiring manager, should I hire you versus somebody else? Why should I promote you and bring you onto my team versus someone else? It's a very tough question to answer, but I will tell you, in all of the folks I've hired in my career or promoted in my career, at the end of the day, when they said, okay, Mark, there were 10 people up for this job, why did you choose so-and-so? I always could clearly lay out what their differentiation was, always. It was something that was never a challenge for me. So that would be something that I would ask you to keep in the back of your mind. What is that differentiation? How do you add incremental value to the team? So in today's world, all of you read the same headlines I do, right? Companies are downsizing. Companies are looking for better ways to do things. I promise you, the people that add incremental value always do that. So I'll use myself. Every day I wake up, how do I add incremental value to the company I'm very lucky to be employed by? Well, what I try to do is I try to help my younger teammates learn some of the knowledge I have. I've been blessed to be and work for a lot of talented folks. How can I share that information? And then at the end, how can I add value to the entire team? So yes, sometimes it's about, did you win, did you lose, as we talk with results. Other times it's as important, how did I deliver value to the team? How did I help another team member that was struggling improve? Here's the interesting thing I've seen in my career is people that I started out with are now my biggest advocates because we've helped each other move up. It wasn't just about how I could climb over somebody else. It was more how I could work with somebody else. So let me bring this also back to home with something near and dear to my heart, San Diego State University. One thing you may not know about me is I'm not an alumni. My wife is not an alumni. But I will tell you, we are very committed to San Diego State, both financially and time-wise. I've been blessed to be able to do a lot of the personal branding classes. I also work with some of the professors on marketing classes. My wife is part of the athletic team's conference and layman's conference. We're all part, and we take a lot of pride in San Diego State. How did San Diego State add value to me? I didn't graduate. San Diego State stands for the highest quality. I have been impressed over the last 5 years interacting with the students and alumni. You accept nothing but the best. You want to be the best. How can I not want to be part of that? That's adding value, ladies and gentlemen. That's why for my wife and I, anytime San Diego State calls, we want to be there because it adds value. Matter of fact, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. Now imagine your own personal brand. If people, when they're talking about the value you add, they get goosebumps. Let me tell you why you need to have this person part of your team. Oh my goodness, they'll do this for you, that for you. As a hiring manager, why wouldn't I want that person on my team? Do you create that kind of passion because of the value you add? If you do, sky's the limit. But if you're having trouble with this one, start asking yourself the same question I ask myself every day in the morning and at night. Every morning I ask, how am I going to add value to my team today? And at night, the tougher question, did I add value? And then trying to quantify it. And if we're being honest, there are times that I go to sleep going, you know what? I didn't add value today. I need to do a better job tomorrow. That's what adding value is all about. This final piece before we wrap up is one that hopefully will hit home to some of you. So now that we're all working from home in virtual world, some people get it, some don't. My goal on this is mainly for the folks that are either looking for a job or already working for a company and you're daily on live meeting or team meetings or Zoom. So I'll share some things that might help. Number one, does your audio match your visual? So let's say I'm in Beverly's meeting right now and Beverly's presenting something and I'm like, oh, or I'm doing this and doing that. Does Beverly think I'm actually listening to her? Remember, unlike conference calls, people can see you, ladies and gentlemen. So are you taking them seriously? Let's say Beverly's talking about something very intense, very serious, and I start laughing uncontrollably. Well, either I'm out of my mind or I'm really not listening to Beverly. And do you think Beverly doesn't recognize that? Now, what does Beverly think of my brand? When she's in a meeting, they say, hey, what do you think of Mark Lindner? You know what? The guy doesn't pay attention. He doesn't take things seriously. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, I didn't get that job. I wonder why. The next thing is, so you've seen me right now. I've tried to be professionally dressed for this call. If I started the call and I was dressed like this, say, hey, today we're going to talk about your personal brand. You'd look and go, what is he trying to do? Now, maybe I enjoy wearing a hat, and that's fine, but it's not about you. It's what kind of brand are you conveying? Are you conveying the kind of brand that's serious, that people want to hire for your team? One of the comments we have in our business all the time, I love being next to somebody that's funny. I'm not sure I want somebody funny on my team though. So I'll go to a meeting and if somebody's funny, I love to laugh. Do I actually want them part of my team? The other thing is stay on brand message. So I'm going to go back to the individual that said they're Nike. Just do it. I'm a doer. That's their brand. What happens if the first time somebody says, great, I need you to do this, and they go, I don't really want to do that. Do you think that person will ever think that person's a doer? Even though you said, Mark, my brand is I'm a doer. Yeah, but when you had a chance to show it, you actually didn't live it. That becomes important. The next thing is conveying your brand in virtual meetings. This is tough. For some of you who are graduating, this is very, very difficult. I'll be honest, it's very difficult for me as a hiring manager. I'm used to in-person, feeling the vibe. A lot of people are very good in person. Unfortunately, with the virtual world that we live in right now, that's not possible. So how do you convey your message? And by the way, people know you're multitasking. Please don't think everybody is silly and doesn't realize. So if I go, yeah, Beverly, oh, yeah, oh, boy, you're very important, Beverly. Oh, yeah. Mark's looking at his phone. He's not listening. And I mean, we all fall into that trap. And again, if I'm honest, I fall into that trap as well. I'm blessed. I have a wonderful team I work with that they'll call me on it. They'll say, hey, Lindner, raise your head up. Can we see your head? Or some people will turn off the video. Do you think we know what you're doing when you turn off the video, ladies and gentlemen? Again, I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying that's how things are portrayed. So just be very careful on these, because now you have your brand. You've decided what your brand is. You've decided that you're working for somebody or a company that fits your culture, that fits your brand. You want to keep conveying that brand so they know this is a person I want on my team for a long, long time. And then never wing it. People can tell if you wing it. So thanks to Beverly and her team, we had a practice session on Tuesday for this presentation. They added tremendous value to this presentation. I can't even tell you. They took me in directions that were more powerful for all of you. And I can't appreciate that enough. By the time all of you signed in, we knew exactly, slide by slide, the messages we wanted to convey. That's what's important. So every meeting you go to, do you add value? At the end of the meeting, do people go, man, was Lindner at the meeting? I don't know. Lindner, was he there? There's nothing.
Looks like he's frozen, so hang with us real quick. Hold on, everyone. Well, he just said his electricity just went out. Can't predict that. So he's texting right now. Hold on one moment. Right in the middle of the good stuff. Just trying to get back on. 1 second.
This is a good time for anyone who may have questions. Just put those in the Q&A. Hopefully we'll get Mark back soon. But this is a good time to get the questions in that area, and we will do our best to address everything when Mark gets back on. And we will, I see someone's asking about a recording. We will share the recording with all the attendees afterwards. So you'll be able to go back through it if you'd like.
Yeah, and he's trying to get back on, so hang with us, everyone. I know we're all used to technical difficulties. Okay, he's logging back on. Hang with us. Keep typing those questions in, everyone. Mark is logging back on. Sorry for the pause. His power went out, so can't predict that.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes, welcome back, Mark.
Well, welcome to the Northeast, everybody. In the Northeast, we are now having strong winds and everything else. So I apologize for that. That's my bad. But I'm blessed to have a wonderful wife who, as soon as it went down, she brought in her hotspot, and we're up and running. Hema, could you allow me to share my screen, please?
Done.
Awesome, thank you. And again, I apologize, everybody, but it never fails, right? So when we were talking, let me do this. There we go. So now we've gone through adding value, how to differentiate yourself, how do you deliver incremental value to the team and adding value. We talked about making sure your message is up and running, making sure everybody understands your message, making sure what people see is actually the brand message you want to portray. And every meeting that you're in, you add value. So at the end of the day, you now have your brand message. You know what you want your brand message to stand for. You've talked with colleagues who, you may want to go over here and think about that. Understand what that brand is, and then what do you want it to stand for? So obviously what I wanted my brand to be in my 20s was different than what I wanted my brand to be in my 30s and 40s. Control your brand message. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't stress this enough. It is absolutely critical that you control what people see your brand as. Again, go back to Serena Williams. When I brought up her name, everybody said she's a tennis player, which she is. I brought up J-Lo. She's a dancer. She is. I brought up Elon Musk, Tesla. He is. But actually, if you'd ask them, I'm sure they'd say, oh no, I'm more than that. You've got to make sure people know what your brand is. Because if not, look it up. And when you're looking for employment or you're looking for that promotion, you want to make sure people understand exactly what you stand for. And here's the other reason why. You want people to put you in jobs that match your brand. So let's say you're working for a company you love. They want to put you in a role that you go, I'm not going to succeed in. And again, I'll use myself. I enjoy people. I love working with people. Putting me in a cubicle in an office wouldn't work for me. I really wouldn't be happy. And typically, if you're not happy in your job, you're not doing a good job, right? So by them knowing, you know what, we can't put Lindner in an office because that really wouldn't work well, they've allowed me to do things like run Pennsylvania. Actively, people have some challenges. Well, Mark, I don't want to be a blowhard. I don't want to be the person always saying, look at me, look at me. That's actually not what this is about. This is about when you accomplish something, making sure people know that what you accomplished. And by the way, accomplished doesn't mean, hey, I woke up this morning. It means that it's something that I'm trying to portray to you. So just something to think about there. And fact check. Remember that colleague I talked to you about? Go back to them and say, you know what, I want to make sure this is the message. And they go, well, remember that last meeting? Remember when you said you were a mark? Yes. Well, I got bad news for you. The last 2 times they asked you to do something, you didn't do it. So I need to change my perspective. So to wrap up and open it up for Q&A, and I apologize, I know sometimes it's coming across spotty. I apologize for that quality of message, but first thing I'd like all of you to do is develop your brand. Think what your brand would be. How do you differentiate? How do you add value? And when you're thinking about how you add value, think about my discussion about San Diego State. Can't people get passionate about your brand? And then control that message. You're always on task and on message. And then fact check. With that, I'm open to any Q&A. And again, I apologize for the downpour here in Pittsburgh, but hopefully everybody can hear me.
Thank you, Mark. We already have quite a few questions that have come in. So I'm just going to jump right in and we'll try to cover as many as we can. So the first question is, how does someone best differentiate themselves if they don't have relevant job experience?
Boy, that's an awesome question. So we all have experiences. What are the experiences that differentiate whether you volunteered? You're very good at X, Y. If you won't hire me, kind of argument, and I appreciate that. But you have experiences to draw on. So how do I differentiate? Well, I helped volunteer for this organization and I helped do this. Or in my personal life, I'm very good at doing that, and let me show you examples. I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Beverly.
Sorry, I was muted. We have a couple of questions about basically kind of how to translate your brand onto paper. So whether that might be a resume or other written words that, you know, and how do you put your brand into that kind of situation?
That can be challenging. So the reason why that worksheet that we're asking all of you to fill out, and the reason why it started with the brand name on top, is as you're associating with that brand, start to ask what the attributes. So for example, for the person that said Nike, just for grins and giggles, go onto the Nike website and see in writing how they convey what their brand is. Because obviously if you're Nike, if you feel your Nike is a brand, how they're marketing their brand would at least tie in. So that would be a starting point. And then look down below those 4 buckets and see what you captured, that what your brand is all about. Those are actually your narrative and your talking point, and then work that into the narrative of the resume. Does that make sense?
Definitely, definitely. And Mark, you started to allude to this a few minutes ago about how your branding might change over time as you know, as you gain more experience, as you get older. Can you talk a little bit more about how branding can change?
Oh, absolutely. We all evolve as human beings. Our belief system, experiences drive how we evolve. So for example, when I use myself personally, when I started out, my goal, and I think that's why I keep going back to the Nike example, I believed I was a doer. Matter of fact, they knew I would run through walls. The companies that I worked for, they knew I would get things done. As I evolved, I realized not only was I a doer, but I honestly liked to fix things. I love to be put into situations where it was hopeless, or so it seemed, and fix them. And then I realized that I also enjoyed watching my teammates win. A little sidebar about me is when I was in college, I played offensive lineman. Now, you'll never see an offensive lineman be interviewed at the end of a game or ever hold up a Super Bowl trophy. That's not what we're about. We're about getting in front and blocking for our team and enjoying the win from our team. That's what the whole thing is all about.
Thank you. And Mark, this is kind of a related question in a way. Let's say you want to change what your brand is. Maybe you yourself have changed and it just isn't a fit so much anymore. Or maybe you realize that the perception people have isn't really what you want them to have. Can you talk about how you might be able to change what that brand perception is?
Boy, that's probably the most challenging perspective. And you can change it, but it's even more important to advertise your brand message and consistently stay on that brand message. I'll give you again a personal example. So remember I told you about that presentation class. When I came out of that class and I realized that I was scaring people more than communicating, I spent a lot of time, probably 3 to 4 years, to convince people. And you could see when I got up to present, they'd sit back in their chair, and it was a trepidation I really didn't enjoy. So it took me 3 to 4 years, because it's the old adage, I can't hear what you're saying, your actions are way too loud. It's the same kind of thing. Eventually people then start to say, oh, they have changed. By the way, I now enjoy listening. Now I enjoy being part of it. But it doesn't happen immediately. It happens over time. And the controlling your brand message and advertising it is really a critical part, not only of evolving, but if you want to change your brand message. And Beverly, if I may, I want to tail off into something you and I talked about yesterday or on Tuesday. And that's sometimes we all want jobs so badly, we'll change our brand because we think the person hiring us wants to hear something different. So my brand might be X, but man, I really want this job and I know they want Y. So just this one time, I'll change my brand to fit what they want. Two things happen. First of all, you feel very disingenuous with yourself, which is a shame. Second of all, you're actually never going to be happy with that company because they hired you thinking you're this brand and you're actually that brand. So it's sort of like you went out to buy a Rolls Royce and you bought a Ford Focus. Both will give you from point A to point B, but the actual experience is significantly different. It's the same kind of situation. So again, can you change your brand? Absolutely. Does it take a long time? Yes, because people will remember, and unfortunately human nature is, oh, they're going to fall back into whatever happened. So you actually have to prove that, no, this is now my new brand. And then B, stay consistent with your brand. Stay with who you are. That way you always feel good about yourself. And the companies you end up going to work for will really value being part of your team.
That's great, Mark. This question goes back a little bit to our 3 celebrities. So, excuse me, how is solidifying your brand maybe more challenging for a woman than a man, and what can be done to navigate that challenge? For example, when it comes to business, most people did not know about JLo's foundation or Serena's board of directors seats, but they knew more about Elon and defined their perception of him through that.
Boy, that's a fantastic question. And I would tell you the sensitivities and how people perceive things are a lot of times unfair. And how do you break through is, again, thinking about advertising your message and being on brand message. So for example, if every time you saw J-Lo, she was talking about her foundation. Every time you saw J-Lo, she was talking about the great things she's doing for humanity. Versus, I saw her last night on a Dancing with the Stars show. People's perceptions are based on what they see. Again, fair or unfair. So you have to even work harder at advertising your message. And Beverly, I would challenge the last part of fact check your brand. So J-Lo friends might say, oh yeah, J-Lo, everybody knows about your foundation. But if she would check with a colleague, they'd go, wow, I didn't realize you had a foundation. So that fact checking to make sure that what you want your perception, your brand to be actually plays is important.
Got it. We had a couple of questions about maybe some of your own inspirations. So people that you look up to in the business industry, and maybe any particular books that you might recommend.
The people that I look up to, I've had, there's a ton. I've been blessed in my career to have a lot of mentors that have steered me the right way. Without a question, Ron Fowler was probably, besides my father, my number one mentor. Ron took this kid who was 35 years old, thought he knew a lot, really didn't, and took the time and patience to bring him along. The key to finding mentorships, and I think sometimes the word mentor is thrown around way too much. A mentor has to be somebody that believes in your brand. So Ron Fowler, even when I did some really dumb things, stood by my brand and said, no, you have Lindner wrong. This is what Mark Lindner is all about. So having somebody that passionately believes in you and your brand. And then, you know, there's a ton of good books. I do everything from You Can Negotiate Anything. I love books like that. I'm a big self-help book person because I believe that I can do a lot better than I am. I'm one that I always try to strive to do better. What I would recommend on reading is reading what speaks to you. There's a lot of folks that will give you advice over different books, and I surely could do that. And if you want, I could send an email of the books that I find very impressive. But what I've learned over my life, it's what speaks to you. What do you need at that time? Some people get caught up in, well, hey, Beverly, I read 6 books. Okay, that's great. Did it help your brand? Did it help what you're trying to achieve? Versus, you know what, this book really spoke to me, and I read it 3 different times because I knew I kept missing things. Like on the You Can Negotiate Anything book, I've actually read it, I think I'm going on the 12th time. And every time I find something there, you go, oh, you know what? That would have helped me in this. But going back and swinging back to the mentors in my life, again, I've been blessed. But the key to a mentorship relationship is you have to be open to some criticism that might be kind of tough. So a mentor isn't somebody that says, oh, the sun rises and sets on you. It's somebody that cares about you passionately, that wants to see you succeed, and sometimes has to give, for lack of a better word, tough love and say, you know, I think you're doing it the right way. You think you're doing it the right way, but not so much. Is that helpful?
Definitely, definitely. And this is a related question, and it's really about how, you know, how do you actually approach getting feedback and that help to monitor your brand and your image and how other people are perceiving you. Logistically, how do you really do that? How do you ask people to do it? Who do you choose? And I mean, it seems like that could be a very difficult request to make.
It is. And actually, Beverly, it's actually tougher on the other side as well. When you have people that for lack of a better word, they become very defensive. So for example, if you're asking for somebody to give you feedback, so I asked Beverly, how was my presentation today? And she goes, well, Mark, nope, Beverly, here's why I did this. It was right. Beverly's like, you're right, Mark. It was brilliant. Thank you very much. And you never get the true feedback. So that's what I'm saying. Go to somebody that you respect. And in most cases, it's a mentor, and say, how was I perceived? And be open to that feedback. So when they give it, and again, you may find yourself, you may have thought you're this brand when you're actually that brand. And if all of a sudden the feedback keeps coming back, Mark, I know you think you're a doer, but man, you did a great job of bringing these 4 people together. You did a wonderful job of that. And, you know, this is like the 3rd time I've seen you do that. All of a sudden you go, you know what? I might be a doer, because you can be more than one of those items, but you may really enjoy and still might really speak to a collaborator more than a doer. Does that help?
That's great, Mark. We do have a couple of people are requesting that you share your book list. So if you can send it to me, we'll get that out by email to all the attendees, as well as the video recording from today. And Mark, we definitely have some additional questions, but I want to be respectful of everyone's time and not go too far over. So maybe it would be possible we could share some of those questions with you by email, and you can share some thoughts, and we could also send those out to the attendees. Would that be okay?
Absolutely, I'd be honored. So whatever I can do to help, hopefully my passion came through loud and clear. All of you are part of an amazing organization, amazing university that does great things. So whatever I can do to help, the answer is yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. We really, really appreciate the time. It's been fantastic. And I really appreciate our audience participants being so active and making this an interactive workshop as well. It really is a lot more fun to be able to respond to people's questions like that. So much appreciated. Everybody's blowing up the chat with all their thank yous to you, Mark.
Thank you.
So this has been fantastic, and thank you, everybody. We'll send out that information as promised. All right.
Have a good afternoon, everybody.